Hi, this is Natalie Clack from JustBE Coaching Company in Johannesburg, South Africa. Welcome to my show, Natural Self-Help Tools for the Busy Entrepreneur. And today we have Andrea. And Andrea is going to share with us a number of self-help tools that she uses herself. And I thank you for coming to the show, Andrea. I'm so glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, love.
It's awesome. Okay, so what we're about is teaching people natural self-help tools that are easy to learn, easy to incorporate, and easy to use every day within their business and personal life in order to circumvent the stresses and pitfalls that come. So I'd like you to please do me a favor and tell the audience about yourself and your business.
Thanks, love. So my name is Andrea Austin, and I have the privilege and honor of being part of two organizations, but they're really one and the same. My Conscious Wellness and Love Evolution. And what they are is a unique synergy of instruments using sound, and as you can see behind me, technology, physical placed energy systems to help create, I call it easygoing, more coherent vibrational fields. And it's interesting because this started for me 10 years ago, my partner 14 years ago, computer architect, entrepreneur, engineer, very sensitive to energy and vibration. And what happened in the short stick was he started to realize that technology could be used to help make our lives easier. Based on the principle that we are beings of energy. That's becoming much more naturally well accepted, not always known, even for me, right? And that technology and sound could be used to make things easier. And so what I loved about the show is he's got a 30-year history with an entrepreneur. I have a 10-year history, and I get it. The calmer we are, the more focused we are, the more clarity we get, the more successful our businesses are. And that's why people meditate. That's why they put different instruments or do certain things in their life or practices, is they're looking to dump the junk, I call it, and get clearer and more focused in what they're wanting to do in the world. And the beauty is that technology is here to assist.
That is really exciting. Thank you so much. So would you mind telling us, what do you use daily to assist you with hurdles that you come across in your business and your day-to-day life?
Yep. I'd say there's a couple of major things. The first one is frequencies made from the voice. So we have the capacity to take a voice sample, which we're going to be doing at your event, and I play them in the background. And the reason I do that is because when stress gets high or emotions get high, we get derailed, right? So let's say you get in a fight with somebody, I'm having fun with it, right? At your work, right? It could take you hours or days to recover sometimes, depending on how deep, right, the emotional triggering is. And from an effectiveness point, if we can deal with those emotions or that stress just a little bit quicker, then we have an opportunity to get back on track. So the first and foremost is my tones. Sometimes I'll play them at night instead. Sort of silently, I'll explain that later in the background. But what they're doing is helping me deal with some of the stresses and emotional triggers that come up by dealing with people and clients and all that kind of stuff that's natural. Other people's shit, right? So
Not mine.
It's never about, not mine, right? So the daily frequencies is probably one of my still more predominant tools. And then there's additional tools that kind of sit in my life that also work to keep the fields more stable so that I'm more efficient, more productive, and more in flow, right? That rather than being bounced around like a ping pong ball.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about those perhaps?
Yeah, I think the one that comes to mind is, so look on my right hand shoulder, you'll kind of see like little tiny instrument, then triangle, then big globe. If I start with the simplest one with the gold in the middle, we actually place them on our desks next to our computers. And what they're doing is using frequency that I can play from my computer or a separate device that is stimulating a vibrational field. So some of them are like aura clearing frequencies. Some are about love. Some are about, we call them entity clearing frequencies, just to kind of deal with some of the energy that's, whether you know it or not, even in the Zoom call, we are connecting. We're loving each other, though. We're not throwing our shit at each other, right?
Oh, sure. Left that behind.
Yeah. So, but it's common, right? You get on a phone call, you're on a Zoom call, you're talking to a client, and we are exchanging energetically. And so both of us have at least one of these instruments sitting on our desk to deal with some of that extraneous energy exchange that we actually can't even see in this moment going on.
Okay.
And so it helps transmute energetically using scalar energy to transmute some of the density in the background.
Wow.
And what we know is when the density is lifted, we feel lighter, and then there's an easier connection and it's easier to flow in our daily jobs. And so that's the most predominant tool, I would say, from a physical standpoint, that we also use. He won't work without them, which is hilarious. When I'm on networking calls in particular, I'll place them in my lap, just to help stabilize the field, right? As people get into a call and not by, I'm an optimist, okay? So I assume they're not being facetious, but they're still bringing their junk in their trunk to the call, whether they like it or not, right? And so it's just a way to more easily transmute that, let the instrument work in the background while you can still be working and doing what you want to do.
Okay, that's quite incredible. You don't really think about it, honestly, but I mean, it really is it's there on an unconscious level. So can you maybe give me a bit of an idea of the kind of challenges that you have faced, and how these have worked for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to give you an example, and then you asked the question, so that was perfect. When I used to be, and so there's a bit of hindsight in here, in an office environment, more solidly than I am today, I was very unaware of the impact of what I call projection.
Yes.
So projection can be conscious or unconscious, but the reality is when you're in an office environment, whether you like it or not, you're interacting with everybody's energy in its wake. And I don't like the use of, personally, the word of empathic, but everybody has a capacity to sense.
Yes.
I just didn't realize mine was supercharged. How's that?
Yeah.
So what I recognize now, right, is that when I was interacting with other individuals, I could not explain why all of a sudden I would feel like shit, or I would feel heavy, or I would feel gross. There was no conscious story, right? It's not like I got into a fight with the guy next door, right?
Yeah.
And now I've recognized that we not only interact with the energies around us, but much of our stories, I see this more consciously now, from the traumas and dramas we've experienced in our own life, are still carrying in our backpack. And so here we are sitting in a society where we're still working hard, let's call it, being driven, wanting to create, and I'll put that in a positive way, but we're carrying around the junk in the trunk of either ourselves or our connections. And I didn't always know that. And my trunk got pretty heavy, to the point where I couldn't figure out, after exploring all kinds of things, how I could feel better. Okay. And so when these instruments showed up in my life 10 years ago, I had an inner knowing, one might say a soul knowing, that these instruments were going to help. And so in the last 10 years, I've seen the significant difference as the junk in my trunk gets lighter, and then my capacity to deal more consciously with the other stuff that still shows up, right? Like I'm not in charge of changing the world and all that kind of stuff, right? There's likely always going to be a bit of chaos around us. And so they're effectively helping me deal more consciously with that, less recovery time. I'm not sideswiped as often. Where it used to take me hours, days, and then sometimes weeks, depending on how heavy my life or my stress or all that stuff goes, now can take me hours and then sometimes minutes.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I so resonate with you. I've been through so many of those experiences. So I suppose it's just part of the course. I want to ask you a very outside the box kind of question.
Okay.
Psychic attack. Basically, of negative energy that is geared towards you. Would you mind speaking to that?
Yeah, I can. Tremendously and consciously more than I could 5 years ago. So I'll give it as a personal example. And when I chose to make some significant decisions in my life 10 years ago, not everyone agreed in my family, right, with the decision. But particularly my now ex-husband and his new wife thought I was a useless and incompetent parent. And I didn't really know that. And so I couldn't explain, right? Like, why do I keep getting knocked on my ass? And so we have a third technology that we haven't spoken about yet called biofeedbacks, which are aimed specifically to assist and lighten that, because of the impact that humans yet have to realize consciously. I would like to think, again, I'm the eternal optimist, right? Or consciously, that when we sit and we meditate or we think about somebody and we send love, it has a huge impact. But what also equally happens is when we sit and we think about something and we think they're a hot and prick, then that goes through too. And so years ago, you know, my children would show up and I'd be really excited to be spending time with them. And within 20 minutes, sometimes I would be on the couch. I literally couldn't get up. And we couldn't explain. I didn't want to believe, because back to the eternal optimist, I didn't want to believe that first somebody would actually think that way. Not that I haven't done it, but like not in long streams, right? And I thought, well, that can't be possible. So my partner, who's the most inquisitive individual, divine, beautiful man, that always is curious about, you know, how can we help, realized there might be a correlation going on between my children arriving and the thoughts and the projections of my ex-husband and his wife. So we put them on the biofeedback systems, or he did without me knowing. And purposely one day went down and worked with these instruments to see if I would change. And sure enough, and he didn't tell me. So it's kind of like that double blind test, right? Because the test dummy was on the couch, I call it. And sure enough, 20 minutes later, I was up and off the couch. And what we recognized, and I've had subsequent conversations about, is because of the thoughts and beliefs of, I'm going to use divorced parenting as a very practical and real example for all the parents out there who get really pissed off, right? I get it, right? I've lived through it. I've been through it. We don't yet understand the energetic impact of our projections. And so it is impacting our auric fields. It is impacting our ability to progress. And there's no fault. It just is, like, it's just life. It's part of being human. But those systems that he developed, which he was pushed 7 or 8 years ago to bring into this existence, to make them economical and affordable, were designed, I would say, primarily for that, because it's very common right now to have energy projected at us, especially when we're going through awkward and traumatic situations and change. And I love the saying, I'm not a religious girl, but we know not what we do. And so anything that we can do to strengthen our energy field and make it easier for us not to have to deal with some of the complexity of we can't see is equally important.
That is awesome. Thank you very much for speaking to that, because honestly didn't understand, you know, for the audience, psychic attack. For me, it sounded like something all witchy and scary.
Me too.
Being, you know, a good witch on the natural medicine woman side of life, I discovered that it's actually related to people's attitudes and behaviors towards you. And I personally have suffered severe health issues, and family members too, as a result of the hatred that has been projected towards us on a daily basis for up to 6 years now. And when I look at the health of various members of my family, you can see when the hatred has been moved from one particular person in the team to the next, because the whole court case has been family targeted. It has not just been me being the mom, it has been my entire family that has been attacked. So it is, if we can just take the time and trouble to stop and think, what are we obsessing about? Because we can change us, but we can't change another. So yeah, I thought it was really
it's
at that end.
It is important. And so even now, right, I can catch myself still at times, right, I'll get a little caught up in some thinking, and I'm much more like, whoa, we can't, that cannot happen. And so I consciously reverse it, send love, take peace, and then take stock inside myself as to what I need to deal with or shift, so that I'm not responding that way. And that's really an ultimate responsibility that each one of us can take within inside ourselves.
I really like that. Thank you for sharing that wisdom. Let's all stand together, get this right.
Right.
Bring some peace to our world, because we can if we just collectively do it together. We can really.
Yeah, we had a discussion the other night through my partner. I'll use that language. And the amount of energy sitting on the planet right now is significantly higher than it was even 10 years ago. And so our capacity to send compassion, love, all those things is equally now as powerful or more powerful than it ever was before. But one could surmise that so too is the opposite. And so there is a lot of encouragement right now to really be more conscious and aware of the way in which we're thinking and projecting into the world. And yeah, we're human and we make mistakes, right? But really focusing on love, because the thing that stood out for me in speaking to your family is there was also a lot of deeper understanding that when we begin to shift and change back to love is my language, I believe that's our origin, then we are impacting our families. We don't need to be doing anything else. And that's an amazing thing to think about on an energetic and ultimately a long-term perspective, is some of us are really stepping outside of the family norm, and it's not easy. I'm not in debate, because there's some long-standing, deep-rooted, interesting patterns we're carrying, but the love that we're each doing and bringing will have a lasting impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really enjoying meeting all the different individuals that we have that are so like-minded and on the same focus. And granted, we're not the majority, but just by the power of our intent to bring good and to focus right will help us to lead hundreds of thousands of people to follow if we just keep that light on. So I like that. That's very exciting. Thank you. Can you give us a little bit of an idea as an audience, how we can actually get involved in what you have? How do we get to use your tools? Are they readily available? And how do we use them on a day-to-day basis?
That's a great question. So 2 of the 3 tools in the toolbox are completely accessible anywhere in the globe. One being the personal frequencies, because we can send an audio through anything now. Awesome. This is where, thank God for technology.
Yeah, okay.
Well, because partly we wouldn't exist without it, but I get it. And the second is the remote subtle energy service, leveraging the biofeedbacks. They also can be used from anywhere in the globe. Both of those are showcased on my conscious wellness. And before I speak to the third, what's interesting is we have been led to bring more of what I would call a sacred economy model into the world. So we have suggested prices. We're in transition. So by the time you post this, hopefully the website will be up to date because we're just updating it. But recognizing that different countries in the globe have different monetary systems, right? It's not all fair in love and war, right?
No.
So, a dollar in South Africa is going to have a different impact than it is in North America.
Absolutely. I mean, we're on 17 at the moment.
Right.
So it can be quite frightening at times.
Right. So what we've done was created a contribution model where people, if they really are drawn, it's not a donation model, very different energy, but actually have suggestions and then have people go inside and reflect based on their capacity, their willingness, then we will generally meet them where they're at. And that will include all our tools and services, including the physical technology. So the third component, we've been guided to create a series of 9 instruments over the years. So far we have 3. And so again, on the site, what you're going to see is their history, their story. These are handmade. They are not made in some nowhere.
Okay.
And they're looking for the people in the homes that are calling them. But I don't know who that is. And I don't know where you're at economically. And I don't know how you're at in all those ways. And so if you're willing and you're wanting, you can explore them on My Conscious Wellness. We can chat, via email or Zoom, but really opening the door, because what we see in the future is as a crowdfunding model. We see asking people that we've connected with for the last 14 plus years to contribute to getting them out into the world, even when people can't afford them. And so this new energy of business, along with distribution of consciousness-based instruments, is really wanting to see that energy succeed if individuals are drawn to them in any way.
That is so exciting, and just because I can. Let's talk to the investment angle. If anybody in the audience or somebody that we meet with, because of being on the Power Partner experience and just signed up as an executive director of the Global Chamber in Johannesburg, we may have some investors hovering around. What would you be looking for in an investor?
So what do you mean by investor? Before I answer that question, there's lots of ways I can answer that.
Help you to take your idea and make it readily available to the community across the board.
So in the moment, interestingly, I don't have any barriers to entry.
Epic.
Because in the moment, demand is not exceeding supply. So we've been very grateful for the individuals that have shown up to help us get them out into the world. I think where investment might play an interesting opportunity, and we've seen this, is the possibility if there was centers or communities that were wanting to place, particularly in the moment, this large one in the middle, into centers to brighten the light, as one might say, in communities, then what we would be doing is looking to say, okay, if you would like to invest, we would like to get them out. But it's getting them out has not been the issue so far. It's actually finding the individuals that are drawn to the instruments and then getting them out for there. So that would be my surmising. I think on the investment side, if somebody was interested in contributing to a crowd fund in the future, while we continue to build them, that might be the other avenue. Or they see a need and they want to fill that order by investing in that way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Clear as day. I love that.
Okay.
Very exciting. Your devices have blown me away, and I cannot wait for us to hit the Hummingbird Awakening Retreat this month so that we can see it all in action. So I'm super amped to see how this works. I'm actually blown away by what it does. I myself, being an energy healer later in life, of course, didn't understand energy either. but I have definitely suffered the ramifications of negative energy to a very, very deep extent in my life. And now, since being conscious about it, can look back and see how that has affected me, and especially your discussion on corporate. I mean, when we went through the 8-month process for them to retrench us from Siemens, that was an absolute nightmare. And it was about 800 people that were involved in meeting after meeting, to the point that none of us really knew who was staying, who was going. They made it really difficult. I literally found out the day before they finished the retrenchment process that I was no longer going to have a job. And a single parent with a 5-year-old and no backup strategy. And at the end of the month, it was frightening. And all of that energy, I remember amongst the people during that period, how it affected the entire office park. People that weren't even involved in the retrenchment themselves. You could actually see every lethargy and the dark cloud almost that settled over the entire office block. And they had, I think, a couple of thousand people there. So it was quite a drastic effect. Energy is frightening. And if we can get these things into office blocks, forget anywhere else. I mean, I think that would just be epic. You could change a lot.
Yeah. And that's really, if you look at it a simple perspective, and I know you'll understand this, all we're doing is adding more light and love into the environments to deal with some of the trauma and the density that still exists while we transition, right, into this next evolution of humanity, letting go of that drama and trauma, stepping into more of more love. That's my simple language, and connection and compassion. And I mean, I see it coming. I see the capacity. It's just that there's still all this junk in the trunk that's still playing out in the subconscious. And we're just gently starting to alleviate some of that in people's personal and environments. Yeah.
It's very exciting. Can you tell me if you've got any programs or any places where you use these devices in groups or one-on-one healing sessions?
Yep, that's great. So we do host online what we call group pop-up sound events. And so people can attend those for no charge, to get curious, to be part of it. And the simplest of way in the moment would be just to join the email list on My Conscious Wellness. We're not mass marketers. I'm not going to be hunting you down, trust me. But that's probably the funnest way. And we typically do that in groups. We used to do one-on-one work. For the most part, we have stepped away. However, it's funny, I forgot about this. I have started to launch, I'm going to call it 12-week or 3-month journeys with people. Okay. And I include the technology as part of the journey. Wow. So creating group environments for this next one in July, and then another one starting in August. I'm taking people through the sacred exchange of money. Oh, wow. So starting to tackle the subconscious beliefs around value, exchange, money, which is a really important topic near and dear to my heart, simply because I am a former chartered accountant. I get the monetary aspect of our reality, but I also, as a kind heart, understand how we don't value our work in the world. Yeah. And so I started about 1.5 years ago with this work, and it became very clear that I need to start hosting group containers. And if people wish, we can include the technology. Of course, 2 are easy because I don't care where you are on the globe, I can deliver it. The third one requires a little more effort, but it is possible. So I would say those are the 2 most significant ways to figure out how we can play together.
That's very exciting. Okay, so just to remind the audience that all of the links are in the chat. So like, subscribe, and keep up to date with our channel, and connect to all of those links so that you're aware of what's going on and can be right in front of the crowd, because this is going to start going wild by the time we're done here. I can see big things for these devices. Okay, so last but not least, are there any last tips or anything that you would like to leave our audience with?
That one's simple in my world. If you could make any choice in your life, it would be to focus and choose love.
Straight to the heart. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for spending the time with us today and for sharing all your information and your incredible devices and for taking the time and trouble to create them, because I know that also takes time to perfect. So really, thank you very much. I am so humbled that I'm going to get to play with your stuff soon. And I'm looking forward to sharing all of what you have with the audience. So thank you very much for coming with me today. Awesome. And thank you to the audience. As I say, like, subscribe, connect with us, and stay informed, because that's the only way for you to move forward in life and make sure that you can circumvent the pitfalls and still come out top class business entrepreneur.